Provide and protect. So I saw a video recently where a psychologist was talking about how when men get divorced, their risk for for unaliving themselves skyrockets. And he was asked, well, why is that? You know, does the risk for women increase? And he says, oh no, the women do fine. And he said, we find the same thing with widowers and widows. The widows do fine if their husband passes, the widowers don't. They generally either, unalive themselves or have all kinds of issues, and they expire much sooner than we would expect them to. And the interviewer said, well, okay, why is this? And the psychologist says, well, there's many reasons, but the main reason that we've come up with is that it seems that men feel they have no purpose. They have no value. They are not needed. Now, it's kind of sad because when you think about that idea of not being needed because this woman is no longer in your life, it's sad that this is what patriarchy has told men, that you have to be needed, because there is an alternative. The alternative is to find situations where you are wanted. But the quote problem with that being wanted, and we see that problem in the dating world today, where a lot of men are, especially on the red pill and the manosphere circuit, are complaining about the independence of women, is that to be wanted requires consent. But society used to be set up in a way where women had to have a man. They had to get married because they didn't have access to very many jobs, to credit, to grants, to employment in a lot of fields. They didn't have access to even signing their name on contracts without a male's approval. They didn't have access to voting at one time. They didn't have access to all these things, so men were needed. They set up the society that way, and they set up the society to oppress women so that they would be needed. But as many of those oppressions have been scaled back, now the way things work is that men need to have a personality. They need to have relationship skills. They need to be enticing for a woman to want them. And she has to consent to be with them when she doesn't really need him financially. And this also goes with the whole protection thing as well. Men have benefited from the bad men because the bad men were the threat, almost like a racketeering scenario like you see in the mafia movies. Hey, you need me around because if I'm not around, something bad might happen to you. And in some cases, they are the something bad, that would happen to them, so you have that kind of, as long as you stay in line, you're protected from me and from other men, because that's who the threat is, other men. So we have this society that's been set up to benefit based on the oppression of women, based on the violence and the threat of men. And now a lot of those things have been scaled back. We have laws against assault and DV and SA and all of these other things that could happen, even stalking and things like that. And of course, they're not perfect laws, but they used to not exist at all. So that's progress. So now, again, like I said, women have access to things they didn't have before. I remember growing up, and even in some cultures it may be this way, where women were pushed not to even be physical, not to exercise, not to play sports because that was unladylike. But now we have women not only playing sports, but in the gym, taking self-defense classes, learning how to use different weapons so that they can protect themselves, getting, big dogs and alarms. And so again, that being needed has been scaled back to being wanted. And so I really believe that, it would be really good for men to switch their mentality from a woman's independence being a problem to, I'm going to be such a great partner that there's going to be a lot of women that want to be with me because I am emotionally available, because I do emotionally regulate, because I do know myself and I can communicate very well. And I know my love languages. I know my fight languages. I know how to hold space for someone. And I actually can take care of myself. I can cook, I can clean, I can help raise the children. I don't see any of these things as women's work. I see them as skills that all adults need to have. And so when you get to that point where you can really truly be a partner and you don't have any need to oppress and suppress and repress someone else to feel like a man, you really have a desire to partner with someone and really bring out the best in them as they bring out the best in you, and bring out the support and encouragement to help them be their best as they do the same for you. When you have this mutually beneficial relationship where you're both seeking the ultimate experience of each other and of yourself together, I think that that's where we're headed. And so I hope in the future that we won't have stats like that where men get divorced or their spouse passes and they no longer feel needed because they won't have had that as their major reason for living anyway. They will have felt a joy and a peace and a pride in being wanted and having the skills that make them desirable as a person and as a partner.